Hi, welcome back to Critterish Chatter. I'm here with a friend of mine, Dr. Daniel Allen, and I'm going to let him introduce himself, even though I've just introduced him, and we'll have a chat about the Pet Reform Bill. Looking forward to this one. So, Dan, if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Hello, I'm Dr. Daniel Allen. Most people just know me as Dan. Animal geographer at Keele University, freelance writer. Also started the Pet Theft Reform campaign with the Stolen Missing Pets Alliance.
Fantastic. So that's what we're going to talk about mainly is pet theft reform. We'll talk more about Dan's background as well at some point. But I'm really interested to get into the pet theft reform because you've done a lot of work on this. Been going on how many years?
I mean, I've been doing it for about 7 years, but then people like Debbie Matthews has been doing it since 2014.
Wow.
And her dogs were stolen in 2006. So that's almost 20 years that, there's lots of people in this have been working together as a team, to make sure that pet theft reform will eventually get over the line. And there's lots of people whose names people don't know at all who've been working, volunteering their time. So it's been a long time coming, basically. So, between 20 years to I've been doing it, say 7-8 years.
Wow, that is a lot of work. And can you tell me a little bit about yourself first? How did you get from being young Dan leaving school to Dan leading a whole kind of pet theft reform bill through Parliament? I mean, crikey.
It's quite I suppose, like if going all the way back from school, I suppose I've always been interested in animals. I've always been interested in I suppose the different reasons that we value animals in different ways and why we like some, we don't like others. When I went to university, I did my first kind of main research was about fox hunting. And I thought, I was really interested in knowing why some people really enjoyed killing these animals for sport, and then why other people were so adamantly opposed to it and talked about cruelty. So I think in terms of the way in which this kind of academic way of looking at human-animal relations came in, it was probably when I went to university the first time round, and then it kind of went further in terms of looking at wider things which I was connected to in my childhood. So as a young kid, I was really, really interested in Tarka the otter.
Me too.
And I always tell this story about, going to the VHS store and being able to choose any video and choosing Tarka the otter and think, oh, fantastic. It's going to be like a little cartoon on the front of this little otter. It looks really like a Disney-fied type movie. And me and my brother chose it, so I'd have been about 6. I thought it'd be great, I thought it'd be a bit of a love story. Maybe it'd be a bit funny. But it ended up being a real otter being chased by real dogs, and there was blood, there was guts, there was death. It was traumatic. And again, so as a small kid, that kind of, I suppose, looking back in terms of his childhood interest or obsession to this adult kind of academic way of thinking about hunting as a sport, as a pastime, as a cruel activity. And then for my kind of postgraduate research, it was about otter hunting. So I looked at historical otter hunting, did that for my master's and my PhD at Nottingham. Mm-hmm. And then since then, I've kind of applied these kind of historical ideas about why it's people hunt them for sport, why they got into communities and went out for a walk in the countryside and just thought they'd kill this animal, and also why it was seen as being such a cruel activity and cruel pastime. And sort of looking at the way in which the otter was valued or it wasn't valued, and applying that to modern day conservation in Britain. So I've done some work for the Environment Agency about otter predation, perceptions of otter predation, and how that may vary around the country depending on who we're talking to. So I suppose that's kind of the background.
Yeah, that's how it all started. And you wrote a couple of books on otters as well, didn't you, along the way?
So I've got there's a book called Otter, believe it or not, and came out 2010, Reaction Books. The second edition was kind of updated for 2020, so that's like the first kind of cultural history of the species. So that always goes down quite well if you're interested in otters.
Yeah.
Another book, Nature Magpie, which looks at kind of anecdotes about the natural world, really, and facts and figures, and just interesting little, a cornucopia of facts and stuff.
I love that word, and I'm in the book.
You're in the book as well, so it's got stuff in there about critter-assisted therapy, and it's something which is just just things that interest me basically, which I find fascinating. So I've got this, in terms of animals, whether it's wildlife, whether it's pets, whether it's the idea of nature more broadly, all these things I find really interesting. And it's something where I want to try and understand why there's so many different perspectives, why there's so many different ways in which we do think, not just in the UK, but around the world. So that's the kind of animal geography aspect, is the cultural significance of animals and also the lived experiences. So I'm really interested in animal welfare. That's my kind of where I connect to everything, as opposed to rights. Welfare is the area in which I'm focused in on.
That's fantastic. So that said, I'm just going to, we're going to go for a break for a second. Okay, welcome back with Dr. Dan, and we're going to talk about pet theft reform. So can you tell us about pet theft reform? It's obviously become a big part of your life. You've spent 7 years on it, and a big passion of yours, because I've seen you with Prime Ministers, I've seen you outside Number 10, I've seen you in the chambers, and even getting appointed to Lighter Wood for it. Congratulations on that.
Yeah.
And a commendation from the Prime Minister himself, Boris Johnson. Tell us about pet theft reform.
For me, pet theft reform is about family. It's something where we've always made sure that the victims, both people and pets, are at the heart of the campaign. And it's been something where it's very much been driven by the kindness of strangers. So we've everybody who's involved with volunteer their time. It's something where we do it because we're passionate about it, and we think that changes need to be made to recognise, firstly, how serious pet theft is on both people and pets. At the moment, it's something whereby the sentences which are available are very kind of minimal. It's kind of small fine, maybe suspended sentence. And there's a very small chance that the police are actually going to find the individuals who've done it. It's about 1% of those who have stolen dogs, in this case, a few years back, would end up being sentenced. And those sentences are generally, as I say, very small. So we've been working together. I got together with the Stolen Missing Pets Alliance. They've been doing this since 2014. I was on Twitter quite a lot of the time, now X, and sort of seeing lots of posters and posts coming to me sort of saying, please, can you share this? Because at the time, my account was kind of more of an animal welfare influencer type account. Things have changed now with the algorithms and stuff and interest generally. But it is something where these posts kept coming through, these posts, can you share this? So I was sharing as many as I possibly could. And I got to the stage thinking, this is terrible. At that time, I had no pets. I didn't have a dog. Well, I did have a dog, actually. Yes, I had Rupert, so who passed away about a year ago.
Sorry to hear about that.
It's still sad after a year. But this idea of somebody taking Rupert from us and seeing all these people pleading and basically not having anywhere to go apart from organisations like Dog Lost and Sampa and other ones which are around, I thought something bigger had to be done. So I reached out basically to Debbie Matthews, Richard Jordan, Arnott Wilson, and Jane Hayes, who are Sampa, Stolen Missing Pets Alliance. I said, let's work together on a campaign. I can help you, and I've got some ideas of how we can do this. I've obviously been learning from other campaigns that were happening at the time. Mark Abraham's great work with it's Where's Mum, but there was Lucy's Law, and there was other campaigns like which came around similar sort of time, which was before us, Finn's Law in terms of with Dave and so forth. So it was trying to find a way in which we could increase public awareness on the issue. Sampa already had quite a fair few politicians who were interested, including a very young Rishi Sunak before he was particularly well known, and to make sure that we could try and change the law, but also make people aware that this is something which is happening. It's something which is serious. It's something which is traumatic for families involved. So the human-animal bond is something which we thought was important. We sort of made that case. Initially, it was trying to change the law in terms of getting tougher sentencing. But what we've done as a campaign is much bigger than that. We've made sure that we're talking about microchipping. Vets Get Scanning, which was Debbie Matthews and her late father, Sir Bruce Forsyth. They've been doing this since 2006, talking about the importance of microchipping and scanning and all that kind of stuff. So it was about working with lots of different people, getting the message out, making sure that we can say, well, actually, it's about the impact that having a pet stolen or abducted from you has on the welfare and the emotional well-being of people and pets. It's something which is terrible. It's traumatic. It's something which has to be taken seriously. So we were finding ways to sort of, firstly, say there should be a bigger sentence. There should be a way of accessing prison time, for example, for doing this.
Yeah.
But also it's something where, in terms of just raising awareness, making the media more interested in this topic, which we did, I think, with time, using government petitions, getting the public to sign. And we had, I think, in the time in which I've been campaigning with pet theft reform, we've had 5 pet theft reform petitions, government petitions. I've been on another one for microchipping with Debbie and Beverly Cuddy as well. And I think we collectively, all them, 50,000 signatures in government petitions about pet theft, about microchipping. And there's been wider things as well which have been happening. So it's just showing how the public really very much got on board. Massive celebrity support, people like Ricky Gervais and Jane Fallon sharing often. Just sort of trying to change attitudes really and say, well, look, pets are more than property.
Yes.
This is the issue here. Pets generally are seen as property. We're saying they're more than property. Pets are family. So the fact that they are taken from us should be taken seriously in the eyes of the law, in the eyes of the courts, in the eyes of the police. So that's what we've been doing. The academic research, the evidence base that we've been growing over the past 7 years is feeding into this change. It's not just about the law change. That's one part. So changing the law is fantastic. The Pet Abduction Bill, which will become the Pet Abduction Act, should come through the next few months. We're now in the House of Lords, so the hope is that becomes law by the summer.
Yeah.
But alongside that, we're going to have to work closely with police forces and continue working with police forces, working with the veterinary profession, making sure that if pets are taken to veterinary practices, that they do get scanned, for example, where they don't have to at the moment. So it's been a big campaign. It's something where we're trying to sort of bring all these different things together, and I think it's kind of getting to the stage now where it looks like there will be positive change.
Yeah, no, it's fantastic because it's more like kidnap when they take your pet, isn't it? You know, it's like my dog Beans. I spent 14 years with him. And if someone had taken him from me after like 10 years, 12 years, it's like having a child kidnapped. And that's the thing, isn't it? It's just, with Rupert as well. I spent more time with him than any other living being. So, and I was the same with Beans.
I'm a bit antisocial, to be perfectly honest, but, it's something where that connection's there.
Yeah.
And it's something where had he been taken, that's the other thing, that it's having spoken to so many people who've gone through this, they're still experiencing it. I recently did some interviews where people have been reunited, which is always nice to hear. But alongside that, there's still the grief, there's still the kind of, there's still the sadness, there's the kind of anxiety connected to when they were gone. Yeah. So if you think about those who are still searching, and those, it could be weeks, it could be months, it could be years that they've been gone. There's always the hope that there will be a reunion. It's the case of persevering, keeping at it. But it's, if I was in that position, I don't know how I would be able to cope.
No, me either. And even though my new dog Echo's a little pain in the bum sometimes, I'd still be gutted if I lost him. So yeah, absolutely, fully with you. So you mentioned Rishi Sunak and the current government. Obviously, we've got a general election coming up in the next few months. Is it cross-party, the Pet Theft Reform Bill?
Yeah, so we've always had, well, I say always, as the kind of political support grew, as we got on the political agenda, there's always been cross-party support. And the main politicians that have been driving for the Pet Abduction Bill over the past, was now 3 or 4 years, have been from within the government. They've been Conservatives. Okay. So it's something whereby, in terms of the shadow death row, they're also supportive of this. So it's got cross-party support. It's got support in Northern Ireland. It's got support in. We'll soon find out if it's got support in Scotland. Slightly different there, but
been developments up there today. There have done. There've been developments up in Scotland today, with the First Minister resigning. So.
Well, that's it, isn't it? So that's one of the challenges with campaigning, is the fact that there's this constant change.
Yeah.
this constant churn of people. I think we've had, is it 3 or 4 prime ministers in England and Wales. Since starting the campaign, every time the prime minister changes, the cabinet changes. Every time the departments voice
everything
changes.
gets struck up, doesn't it?
So you have to keep starting again and again and again. So it's a really kind of long, drawn out process. But obviously, to get through the Houses with a bill like this, which we're hoping to with the pet abduction bill, it ensures there is scrutiny along the way, which I think is really important. It's something where I know it's long, it's drawn out, but when the law eventually does happen, if it does happen, it would have had lots of insights, lots of kind of feedback, lots of criticism from those all over the House. Anybody can sort of make amendments and so forth and say they support it or they don't. So the hope is that it makes it a stronger piece of legislation as well. Whereas some stuff that's just sped through, we know what happens with that sort of stuff. So,
so what kinds of pets does Pet Theft Reform Bill cover? Does it just cover dogs, and would you like it to be more far-reaching in terms of our animal companions? My skunk Stoosh, had I lost her, I'd have been beside myself. Does it just cover dogs at the moment?
At the moment, it's for England and Northern Ireland, it's going to be dogs and cats.
Okay.
So dog abduction and cat abduction.
Cool.
For Scotland, they've just got the dog abduction bill, which is proposed. For Wales, they'll probably eventually follow suit to whatever England and Northern Ireland are doing. So, but it's a devolved issue, so Wales are sort of holding out for a bit, and they'll probably get onto it next year, hopefully, I guess. I don't think we're going to be able to change their minds before then. So, dogs have been the main focus, largely due to the fact that there is the kind of data there to show that so many are being stolen. So in terms of crime, in terms of organised crime, we know that dogs are very much a part of that. Cats are to a certain extent, but it's harder to know in terms of the data about stolen cats because of the way in which they live. So in fact, they're roaming and that kind of stuff. So there's less data about cats being stolen, but Pet Theft Awareness, they did some really good freedom of information requests, and they found that there was an increase year on year of the number of cats being stolen. Although that could also mean that there's a different way of recording stuff and there's more interest from the police because of publicity and that sort of stuff. But anyway, so they're recognised as, connected to organised crime to a certain extent. Initially, I was looking at things like rabbits, but going to the different charities and trying to find out and looking at the data, there's very little. You might have 1 or 2 a year that may be recorded as being stolen. So I think the initial thing in terms of getting the law to change, it's the fact that it is connected to organised crime has put this more on the agenda. Also, in terms of the pet abduction bill, there is the scope for it to be extended. So that's important. And I think that would also be the same for Scotland with the dog one. So with that, exactly how that would work, they're not all of a sudden going to be stealing lots of skunks or lots of rabbits, but it could with that. I think what would happen is if it is something where this is the law's in place and it is having an impact and it is being enforced, and then there are instances like recently there's been quite a few donkeys have been stolen, for example. Just individual cases that hits the news.
Let's imagine horses as well. Imagine horses.
And horses aren't included in this, but it's something where certain MPs would like them to be. So it does have that scope. I suppose there's the crossover. There's a blurry area of livestock. Lots of sheep get stolen. Thousands of sheep get stolen every year. But again, it's not about that. If you want to have a livestock theft reform coming in, this kind of opens the way to that. If those from
farm animals and stuff.
So there's ways in which hopefully this law will sort of, for others, if they do so wish, changing that to ensure that the welfare of the animals are taken into account, the emotional impact on both people and the animals as well, because at the moment that's not the case. So that's the important factor here, is to sort of say it's basically just recognising and using, in this case, dogs and cats as the initial.
That's good.
The initial animals which are being sort of looked at in legal terms.
They're probably the most popular as pets anyway, aren't they?
In terms of numbers, you've got 11 million, 10 million of these cats and dogs. So I think it is something where we'll see. I think it's something I would like to see more included, but the danger with campaigning for that, if initially we started saying we want goldfish to be included and we want hamsters to be included, you've got different lifespans as well of the animals, all manner of different things. So it wouldn't have been taken seriously had we started campaigning for that. So it's about connecting it to things which politicians take seriously. So in this case, organised crime being one, but also the kind of emotional connection. But as you say, you can have an emotional connection with any animal. It could be a skunk, it could be a frog, it could be a stick insect. Absolutely. So there's going to be ways in which debates about this if the law is actually made.
I mean, well done for connecting it to organised crime. I had no idea.
Yeah, some of the research I'm doing at the moment, looking at how it's connected to, puppy farming as well. There's quite obvious links. So it's something which there's still opportunists. It varies, and there's been lots of scams recently as well where people haven't been involved in actually stealing the animals themselves, but they do phone people up and scam loads of money out of them. So it's a horrible crime all over. Basically, it's just something which wanted to reduce. Basically, it's never going to stop, but it is something which could happen less often. Fewer people could have to go through the experience of this. So that's the kind of aim, I think, is just saying this. It's not something which is acceptable.
Yeah. So with my work in prisons that I do, hopefully at some point I'll be meeting some people who've been put away for the crime of pet theft, and I can say, I know the man who brought in that bill and got you done. Now go away and leave my dog alone.
I suppose that in terms of having those encounters, if that was to happen in the future in the work that you do, that's something which I'd imagine would be very beneficial in terms of changing the way in which certain people think about the way in which you have certain relations, certain bonds with different animals. So, your work is really, really vital for that. And it's something where if that was to happen, that, in my opinion, would be positive. It's something where
they get you
get that kind of
different outlook on animals, don't they? I'm seeing that.
Yeah, pretty much.
You mentioned Sampa quite a lot. Can you tell us a bit more about Sampa, the Stolen and Missing Pets Alliance?
So Sampa, they were formed in 2014, and it is Debbie Matthews, the late Sir Bruce Forsyth for Vets Get Scanning. They joined forces with Jane Hayes, who's created Dog Lost in about 2003, I think it was, the biggest kind of free missing and stolen pets database support group in the country. It was Arnott Wilson, he was the Dog Union, and also Richard Jordan, who's Pet Theft Awareness, alongside Arnott Wilson, who put that together. And I think they formed in about 2012. Yeah. So there's been people looking at this issue for a long time. It's something where I came in later, and for me, it's always been important to sort of show the foundation of where this started. Had they not been doing their work for, in some cases, well over a decade before I even started thinking about this, we wouldn't be anywhere near where we are now. So it's something where it's basically using their enthusiasm, their kind of inspiration, their contacts, and then building upon that and just changing the way in which we approach things with the petitioning, with the TV, with the radio, with the article writing, with the evidence-based growing in terms of academic papers, which kind of, their hard work has ensured that it's got to where it's got to. And then a lot of people along the way have also been a part of the Pet Theft Reform Coalition, volunteers behind the scenes just doing so much about it. But they're totally voluntary, all of them totally their time, as it's something which they feel strongly about. Some people have had their dogs and cats have been stolen, have gone missing. They've been helped by some of these organisations. They're just giving back. So they're kind of really, really inspiring bunch, and it's something which I've been really, really lucky to be able to work with in this time. So very, very, really, really great things for the public. And at the moment, Dog Lost, who I've become a patron of the Stolen Missing Pets Alliance, as have people like Beverly Cuddy, who's Dogs Today magazine editor, and Mark Abraham, OBE, as well, the vet, and campaigner, and John Cooper QC as well, I think, is also. Okay. So there's lots of people here who all work together.
Yeah.
Simply down to the fact that we think that pets being stolen or abducted is wrong, and we need to do something about it.
Fantastic. Well, I think collectively you've done a sterling job, haven't you? Getting it passed in law, and congratulations to everybody involved. And congratulations
fingers
to you.
Crossed.
Yeah, fingers crossed. So we're going to take a break now, and we'll be back in a second to chat more about other things that Dr. Dan does. Okay, welcome back. So now we're going to talk to Dr. Dan about more, I don't know why I always call you Dr. Dan, but I do, about more of the other stuff that he does. So the pet theft reform stuff is absolutely brilliant, and I've learned a lot. So you do many other things as well. You write, you mentioned about being a freelance writer. You've published several books, especially books about otters. The Nature Magpie is a fantastic book. I'm not saying that just because I'm in it. I'm saying that because I've read it and it's fantastic. You do lots of research papers, and you lecture at Keele University. So what projects are you currently working on? What are you doing?
Research projects at the moment. One of the things we're doing actually is looking at it's basically a No Pets project, we've called it, and we got some funding from the Society for Companion Animal Studies, and I'm working with some colleagues, Mark Lucarini, Professor Claire Holdsworth, and Cameron Husserm, I can't remember, who's a postgraduate student, and we're basically looking at ways in which pets don't have a presence on university campus environments, and trying to find ways in which that kind of absence may have any kind of emotional impacts or welfare impacts on the students that have left them behind.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's been interesting. We're writing the papers up this summer, but basically seeing whether students are impacted by this separation over this time, whether they think certain spaces could become more pet friendly, whether they want that to be the case or not, and just trying to integrate ideas and encounter sessions to see whether that's something which may or may not be useful. So we've had various people sort of doing sessions with us, with dogs and so forth, dog encounter sessions, and just seeing how certain spaces may change, see how certain kind of feelings may change within these educational spaces, and seeing what could be possibly realistic and unrealistic avenues in the future for embedding more sort of human-animal interactions within university teaching and learning environments. We had Chris Kent come up with the Canine Project, and Chris Kent, I don't know if she does amazing work. She's got rescue dogs. She had the Canine Cafe in I think it's somewhere in Norfolk, quite some years ago, and so she's got dogs largely from Romania, rescue dogs, and then she works with people in the public, generally people that may find it difficult to engage with people, and the dogs in this case become facilitators. They become can't think of the words, but so we sort of had some organised sessions with that, where Chris and the dogs were there, and just to sort of gauge what students thought, I suppose, and just to kind of get an understanding of what may be beneficial, what may not be beneficial. So we're finding, in terms of the differences coming through, we did a massive survey, about 500 people responding from Keele, and we was a real difference in terms of the age differences. So those in their kind of early 20s, really interested in having pets within their halls of residence and that kind of stuff, but generally saying no, it's not realistic. You've got people, the older generation, 10 years older or so, sort of saying, well, actually, what about the responsibility of individuals?
Yeah.
What about the actual animals themselves and their well-being and their welfare? So it's interesting in terms of that kind of personal responsibility and group responsibility. Yes. So that's one of the projects that we're working on, to sort of get an idea about, that kind of human pet and the absence and what implications that might have on welfare and well-being, whether there's any kind of interventions that could be sort of introduced at any stage. And the kind of things that we are finding is the fact that most people were saying more kind of human animal encounters would be good, but they'd have to be organised. You have to be able to opt in or out.
Yeah.
When you came, Chris All Sorts,
Yes.
Animals of Society, my module a few years back, and Carrie Alcock with Rentabeast as well comes across and comes in embedded within my lectures to sort of think about the ways in which we actually feel and smell and we touch these animals and how that might change the way in which we think about them and that kind of stuff. That's something which is really goes down well. That's something which students love. But if it was something where it's always there and people have to pop in and, some people don't want to meet a stick insect. Some people might not want to meet a dog because they're scared of it. So it's about possibly providing more options, but not forcing it upon people. Halls of residence, a definite no-no, something whereby, in a place where you're not even allowed to have candles, should you really have another life there which you're looking after and, in terms of a dog or a cat or, So, really interesting. That's one of the projects that we're working on at the moment. Lots of pet theft stuff still. So still lots of papers coming out this year. But we're looking at I did a project with Jamie Arathun, who's at Glasgow, looking at It's Too Hot to Handle on social media. So we basically looked at ways in which Twitter, X, and Facebook were being used to try and get an online presence to try and help make either pets go viral or make them too hot to handle so they would be reunited. So we've done a really interesting study where we're looking at the different strategies. Jamie's led on this paper, and it's really interesting.
That's a good idea.
Social media data and interviews as well. And it's just. I think we found some ways. We've made some suggestions which could help improve the chance of posts and posters being shared more. To help. So it's so that's interesting.
Pet theft virus, really, isn't it? It's a pet theft virus. Sorry? It's a pet theft virus. If you can send the pet that's been stolen viral, then
that's it. What we're seeing is we're sort of trying to find in the paper, we're figuring out why some do go viral, why some don't. And it's something where you can't make something go viral by design. It's something where it's pretty much impossible unless you've got a big marketing company and big celebs involved and that kind of stuff. But you can find ways in which if you've got a poster of a missing or a stolen pet, it can be more attractive, more likely that people would share it, which then could improve the chances of somebody seeing it and saying, actually, my neighbour's got a dog like that the other day, that sort of thing. So it's when those people who are victims of pet theft and pets going missing, they've got these voluntary organisations they can go to for support. They can go to some business. Because of resources, can do very little. So it's about trying to find ways in which we can help those individuals, help those families, in this case, just by changing the way in which they write about their stolen or missing pets. So for me, that's another important part of pet theft reform, is it's a very kind of complex way of looking at all these different issues. So my brain over the past 7 years has just been but it's trying to find a solution, and I find that interesting and important. So that's why I've kind of pushed on with it for so long. But it can't just be done with a law change. These sorts of little things all have to be done. And luckily the team is building. We're getting more people working on the research, but it's the stage now where it looks like there will be positive change, and there'll be a lot there for other people to take over when they wish to.
Yeah, brilliant, fantastic. So the whole thing about them being too hot to handle, I love that idea. That's brilliant, absolutely brilliant. So you focus on animal geography at Keele, don't you? At Keele University. So animal geography. Now, when I first met you and you said I found that you was an animal geographer, I thought geography is about like land mass and water and islands and like where's France and where's Belgium and what's Scandinavia all about. It's a strange place. So I just didn't get animal geography. So can you tell us what animal geography is and how somebody who's maybe just coming up to doing their GCSEs at school and might want to go into animal geography, what subjects would they need? How do they get into it?
Yeah, it is niche. It is quite different, I suppose. It's a part. Basically, my background is geography. I got a degree in geography. Then I kind of became more focused in human geography, so the social aspects of how we live in the world and how we interact and understand different spaces and different communities and all that kind of stuff. The economics, the politics, the ethics, all those sorts of key themes that come through the environmental. And animal geography is a sub-discipline within human geography.
Okay.
And so what the kind of key focus is the cultural significance of animals around the world, so looking at it from different perspectives and different space and different times, but also thinking about the actual lived experience of the animals themselves. So that can include ideas about animal welfare, ideas about animal rights as well. So in terms of how to get there, there's similar subjects like anthrozoology, for example. Human animal studies is something which brings all these different subjects together, but it's something where you don't necessarily need to have any sort of specialist A-levels or so forth going into it. So even if you were to start doing geography, for example, at undergraduate level, which you've never done it before, you can still find your way into animal geography if you wanted to.
Oh, well.
So it's just something where I think with geography, the great thing about the subject, there's so many different directions you can go. You could be thinking about, it could be hydrology, it could be glaciology, it could be sedimentology, it could be, whatever. It could be social geography, historical geography, post-colonial. It could be any manner of direction which you want to go into, which is one of the great things about it. So for me, it was animals, human-animal relations, and it's something where, I think it's something which is important. So when I engage with the public and the media and stuff, I always use the term animal geographer, just for that question itself, just to sort of make people think, oh, what's that?
Yeah.
And then go, actually, that kind of makes sense. I like that.
It does.
So
it does. And it sounds really interesting. And obviously it is, because you're a really interesting chap. So,
Well, thank you. But you get there's people from other disciplines that do similar work, but from slightly different perspectives.
Yeah.
So you have sociologists and psychologists who would be looking at human-animal relations using slightly different theories, slightly different lenses. So it's something which for me is pretty fascinated in. It's something which why do we like some animals more than others? Why do we protect some?
Why are we scared of
others?
some?
And it's just But why are some pets, but some shouldn't be pets?
Yeah.
According to whom? So I think that's it's an interesting area.
It is, absolutely. So because I found out from my work that a lot of different people bond in different ways with animals. So I'll get guys who they only like the insects, or they only like the frog, or they only and then you got, because we live in such a multicultural society, you've got people who, for religious reasons, can't go by dogs, or they can't go by cats, especially at certain times of their religious calendar. And navigating all of that and trying to be all inclusive in terms of the therapy is difficult. And that's why I use so many different species. So in terms of books, are you likely to write a book about the pet theft reform journey that you've been on?
I don't think so. No, I think I'm going to write a few more. Well, I'm still writing academic papers on it, so hopefully that will be evidence to help ensure that changes can happen. I might do a paper about the actual campaign itself, how that kind of came about. So what pet theft reform was, how it's a certain type of campaigning style, and how things went well and didn't go well, and linking it to various different things. But I don't think I'm really interesting enough to write a book about campaigning, to be honest. So, but it is something which is.
I have to ask.
There's some great books out there already about campaigning. So Mark Abraham's written a few about Lucy's Law and Be More Mosquito. So I'd point people in that direction.
Be More Mosquito.
So just.
Oh, be annoying. That one. Is that basically what he's saying?
I think it's just that I can't remember. Just think. Exactly what it will come to me in a second. I think. I think it's how any individual can have an impact, I suppose. So if you think about one mosquito and the amount of blood it would take, and how it could be. you think you're too small to make a difference, try sleeping with a mosquito, is a quote from Dalai Lama.
That's right.
That's on the back of his book. So I've cheated.
Fantastic.
By my side. So, but it's a fascinating, it's accessible for the public. So I often get well, I used to get a lot of campaigners getting in touch asking for advice.
Yeah.
And you can give bits of advice, but I think if you want like a popular science type book talking about campaigning, that's great.
Okay.
So yeah, I'm not sure. I think future books probably going to be more wildlife related again. Okay. I think so. Cool. But I've got no plans at the moment to sort of go in that direction. But
okay, yeah, I had to ask.
Sorry,
I said I had to ask.
Yeah, no, cool. Well, I was going to write Pet Nation, wasn't I? And nothing happened. So.
Well, that brings me on to one of my final questions. But before we get there, the last kind of few questions now. But you've got that interest in the human-animal bond, and you can see from the work that I do that's intrinsic to my work and the success of my work is the human-animal bond. But it's still seen as snake oil. I think so far since I've been doing this, I've been doing it for 14 years now. There's been one study in animal-assisted therapy, as far as I can see, and that was done by a young lady in a prison. He did a study on the work I did at her prison for her doctorate. So it's seen as snake oil. How do we stop people seeing the human-animal bond as being more than snake oil?
I don't know. It's difficult, isn't it? Because I know when we first met, how many years ago it was, that would have been almost
2010.
About a decade ago, wasn't it?
Yeah, 2010.
When? So... And back then it was the case that certain organisations, it was just dogs or cats, and occasionally rabbits might come into the equation. But, in terms of reptiles, amphibians and other types of small furries, it wasn't really sort of looked upon in a very positive way. Yeah. Well, not positive, it's kind of criticised, wasn't it?
Yes.
I suppose you've had the kind of rise of horse-assisted therapy and donkeys and that kind of stuff. So there's that kind of recognition. But in terms of research, you're right, in terms of looking at kind of more exotic, the non-traditional animals used within such spaces as therapeutic spaces, whether it's in hospitals or prisons, there's nothing really much beyond the dog, cat, horse, donkey. It doesn't seem to be, does there?
No.
And I don't know, because as I've always said when I've talked to you about this, and as you always said, it's something where the bond is individual. Yeah. It's something whereby, everybody's got their own past, everybody's got their own kind of connections, everybody's got their own fears, everybody's got their own,
experience.
So, exactly. So, being able to meet something which you've never met before, and then that becomes something which, brings so much joy to you for that moment in time. Could be a skunk, for example, and then having that opportunity to meet the same skunk once every 6 weeks, and you have that same moment every time, and you look forward to that. Why is there any difference to meeting the same dog on an organised kind of...
Yeah, the best story I have to tell is of a guy in a psychiatric hospital who had a really severe motorcycle accident, and he lost his partner. He was in a coma for 3 years. Came round, got no use of his legs, got no speech, and he came out, found out his girlfriend had been killed outright in the motorcycle accident, and he lost the will to live, basically. The ability was there for him to get back the use of his legs, but he just wasn't bothered. He wasn't interested, and he was in a psychiatric hospital for obvious reasons. And he developed a relationship with Stoosh. He met Stoosh, and one day, after about 12 months of him seeing her probably every couple of weeks, every month, he found out we got a harness and a leash for her, and he said, I want to take her for a walk. And I said, well, that's fine. I'll push your chair, you can, because he was in a wheelchair, I'll push your wheelchair, you can hold the leash. And he went, no, I want to walk her. And he started working with a physiotherapist to learn to walk again. And learn to walk again in order to walk Stoosh. So yeah, that was for me. That says everything.
It just goes to show, doesn't it? It's just something where everybody has their different things that will sort of make them want to do that. So yeah, I suppose the broader criticism of animal assisted interventions, therapy, of the various different names for it. I think it's like with anything, isn't it? It's just recognizing impact it has. So it's like, for example, pet keeping.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of studies out there that say that, or a lot of people say that having a pet will improve your mental health and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
That's not to say it's going to stop your depression. You're still going to have depression.
Yeah.
There might be moments in time in which that kind of your mental health will be improved because of the routines, because of the bond, all those sorts of things. I think that's probably part of the danger with any assisted therapy, whether it's animals or not, is possibly, whether it is of the moment, whether it's of a certain period of time, but there's still certain things where, like I say, somebody's saying, if you've got a dog, you won't have depression. Well, you will.
Yeah.
It's a lie. You definitely will still have depression. It will just change the way in which you live with that other.
Again, so it changes the way that you kind of deal with it, doesn't it? Relate to the condition.
Yeah, but I think the work you've been doing is amazing. I think the work. It's that bond, isn't it? I think it's the bond, whether it's the bond in terms of the emotional bond, whether it's like, the work that Carrie does, for example, with the stick insects. That's not so much necessarily about that, but it's about the way in which, and you with some of the work that you've previously done, is the way in which you can teach and you can engage with certain people in different ways. Yeah. And it opens up this kind of more of a open, accessible, socially lubricated kind of environment whereby people are more inclined to learn, they're more inclined to do different things. So I think that's something which is kind of, but also as you found from the past, there's always going to be traditional organisations that want to stick to traditional ways of doing things. Yeah. So some people might still be saying, well, actually, animals in general, even dogs, it's not enough. You should be doing this or that. Whereas others might be saying, well, actually, dogs, cats, fine. Anything beyond that. So there's lots of challenges, I guess, to get people convinced.
Yeah, I do find that the guys in the prisons that I go to and in the psych hospitals, they want to know about I don't know whether they think I'm David Attenborough or what, but they want to know everything about the animal and where it comes from and how it relates and I can tell I can talk about the animals I've got for forever, but. You tell them about chinchillas and how chinchillas were saved from extinction by fur farming. So it's ironic that fur farming actually saved the species from extinction. And you can educate. I had a guy in a prison who was quite irate about something, and he stood with a snake for about half an hour talking to me. And he said, "I'm glad I've seen you. I was off to watch an action movie," he said, "but now I'm going to go and watch a David Attenborough show." And that's from holding a snake for half an hour. So, it's just that mental switch onto these animals are really interesting. I want to go learn more about them, rather than going off and watching some mindless violence on a film. And that's fantastic.
It's amazing, isn't it? I think it's.
So, last couple of questions now. So, when I first met you, 13 or 14 years ago, I think it was, about 2010. You were searching for your perfect pet. You were writing. What was the book called again?
It was Pet Nation. That's something about the search for a perfect pet. Yeah. I was writing for Small Furry Pets magazine and Practical Reptile Keeping.
Yes, I remember.
Yeah, so I had monthly columns. So I wrote quite a lot, and they were published in these different sort of magazines and stuff.
Did you ever find it?
No, the book didn't happen in the end. It was for various reasons. I think I sort of came into it. I came into it because at the time I was kind of unemployed. I was unhappy, and I thought I need to do something to get me out of this. Yeah. So I thought the freelance writing was starting, so I'd get cracking on that, and I wanted to do something where I could meet lots of people, meet lots of animals, and basically learn from people, really. Yeah. And I was really interested in sort of trying to, find out more about all these different species. I was always interested in things which are kind of possibly controversial, and trying to get at the other side of the story, I suppose. And it was just kind of like good fun. I was going around the country meeting really amazing people, some kind of quirky people as well, but it was just and some remarkable animals. And it's just and it was just it was interesting. It was something which at the time just really enjoyed it, and it sort of made me a lot happier. And I was writing about these animals and sugar gliders and iguanas and all manner of different species. It was amazing. And I think because I went into it, I don't know, almost as a kind of a slightly odd but trustworthy person, I guess, who's interested in people's animals. And then I think what happened with time is the more, I think with anything, this isn't an indication of the exotic pet trade at all. Anybody who has any animal has different standards in terms of welfare. And I think what it did, it opened my eyes to good practice and poor practice. And I think as the longer that I was kind of within the community, some people welcomed me with open arms, other people absolutely hated me, which is totally understandable. That's absolutely fine. And I think when it was more of the kind of almost clownish, kind of take the mickey out of myself writing, and I think that was that was okay. People kind of liked that. But when I started questioning certain things which were happening, that wasn't welcomed so much, understandably. So for me, the book couldn't really happen at that time, because had it been written in the way in which I was writing the magazine columns, it would have been almost like promoting the exotic pet trade. Which I didn't really want to do. I didn't want to be against it either. I didn't want to chat. And also, if I changed what I'd originally started to do, where I'd been trusted by people to meet animals, and then done this kind of undercover type thing, it wouldn't have been right. It would have been the wrong thing to do, because people had trusted me. So all the things that had happened then and did happen, the things that I knew about, will stay with me. I'll keep them under my hat. It wasn't meant to be about that, but I learned an awful lot by going through that experience and meeting lots of people. And to be honest, if I was to write that book, I'd probably write it in a similar style as it started off, quite playful, quite nice, quite funny. An interesting way of learning more about different species. And because it's quite a long time after the fact now, that was about 2011 I started doing that. It's something where I think primates as pets, for example, they're pretty much banned now. They're licensed only. So, so I don't know. I found it fascinating. I wouldn't change the way in which I did things. Because that's just as I am. That's what I'm like. So, but also, I still sometimes think, maybe I should still write the book, but it would have to be done in such a way that it's. I don't think it could be written now, to be honest, because it's a tricky one. It almost got published. It almost did, but it's one of those things where I'm not really interesting enough in terms of they wanted a celebrity to write it. It wanted to be a
saying you're not interested enough, Dan. Stop it.
So, but yes, so it was a very interesting experience. I met some really fantastic people, some of which, like yourself and Carrie, I'm still in touch with, and various other people as well. So I won't name everybody. I've named some people already today, but so I think it was really interesting. I learned a lot. And for me, as an animal geographer, it really opened my eyes, I think, in terms of something where generally certain organisations and just generally you think exotic pet trade, it's very kind of insular, it's very odd, it's very unusual, and actually no, it's not. It's just the same as anything else. It's just people are drawn to different animals for different reasons, and I think that's something which is kind of often totally forgotten, and I suppose I became too blinkered by the end of it, having, as I said, seen and heard certain things, and I was getting more into the animal welfare, sort of flirting with rights at the time as well. I'm not doing that anymore. I'm very much animal welfare. So you can get an idea of So it was a good learning experience, and I enjoyed it anyway.
We enjoyed being part of it. So what's your favourite animal out of all the animals in the entire world? What's your favourite animal?
It's got to be otter.
Yeah, I thought it was.
It's got to be otter as a species. I think I don't know. I think the hairy-nosed otter, because I've never actually seen one.
Oh, wow.
And they're the most endangered of the 13 otter species. So, and they've got this like mystical, mustachioed name. It's kind of quite nice. But so
hairy-nostrilled otter.
Herinos Otter, sort of Indonesia way. So
Okay.
that's where they are. So, but yeah, I'd say otters because of the in which that sort of is connected to my academic stuff, and then beyond that, dogs.
Dogs.
So you asked about finding the perfect pet.
Yeah.
Obviously, the search for the perfect pet wasn't about there isn't a perfect pet. That was part of the joy of doing that approach. Because everybody has their own opinions. So for me, obviously met Rupert, Chocolate Labrador, who was Louise's dog, and he was a character, shall we say?
Yeah.
He's not one of these kind of really well behaved. He wouldn't be a therapy dog, shall we say? Although he was very loving and sort of loved people. And when he was part of my family, he was my perfect pet. Even though he was by no means perfect. So that's something, but it did sort of show that. And the thing which would have come out in the book had it been sort of published, so it was almost written, but it was the fact that dogs, wherever I went, I seemed to get drawn to dogs.
Yeah.
So I went to visit Daphne Neville, for example, who had her otters in a garden.
Yeah, I remember.
And she had the big enclosure, and she didn't call them pets; they were ambassadors for the species. And she had this mixed greyhound whippet type dog there, and it just kept coming up and putting its head on my knee while we were having lunch and stuff. And just little things like that. There were kind of little encounters and Beans meeting Beans as well. And it's something where, as a kid, I was scared of dogs. Big dogs scared me because I got dragged down the road once by an Alsatian holding its lead and cut all my knees and my arms and stuff. So it's something, just that there's a reason why, I suppose, dogs and cats are loved by so many people in this country because of the very kind of attributes that they have. So
they're very interactive pets, aren't they, dogs? Yeah. Cats are narcissists, but there you go. that's another thing. So last question I ask everybody. Normally it's what's the best thing about being you, but today we're going to ask what's the best thing about pet theft reform.
The best thing about pet theft reform is hopefully that it will become, the law will change, and hopefully it's going to make pet theft a less attractive crime for those who take part in it. So hopefully it will help protect our pets and help protect families.
Fantastic. Well, thank you very much for your time, Dan. It's been an absolute pleasure and a joy to see you again. Yeah. And we'll have to go for a pint soon. We'll invite Karen.
Definitely, that's great to catch up. Thank you for inviting me onto the podcast. I really appreciate it.
Enjoyed it.
Yeah, keep up the excellent work.
Thank you. And thanks a lot. Take care. Thanks for joining us for the latest episode of Critterish Chatter. Hope you enjoyed that one as much as I did. There are details of how to find Dr. Daniel Allen on his socials and via the World Wide Web in the show notes. You can also find me on social media if you just search Critterish All Sorts, or via my website critterishallsorts.co.uk. And you can suggest ideas for the show, maybe some questions for possible guests. Join us again next month for another episode of Critterish Chatter, because there's plenty more where that came from.